Hey y'all. So, chapter 5 of The Great Divorce. There are certain times which I've found where you read something and it's like the closest thing you could find to God directly speaking to you. This morning, reading chapter 5 was it. Like that, I am feeling very convicted right now. I'm feeling like C.S. Lewis wrote me into his book, and I am feeling like God has seen me, and I'm uncomfortable with it. So, not gonna lie, I'm a little like disheveled in teaching this, but I figured that'd probably be the best time to do it, um, because it's maybe the most raw. So, anyway, chapter 5, we get the character of the bishop, and I'm titling this lecture "When Seeking Festers." So, you guys know, being in class with me for the past 9, 10 months, whatever it is. That my desire for you is that you guys learn how to seek truth, right? That you become seekers. And we've talked constantly in every book about how it's uncomfortable, about how much you have to give up to do that, how the light hurts when you're escaping the cave, how people will hate you and try and kill you like an enemy of the people. Um, and so y'all know that my desire for you is that you seek truth relentlessly throughout your whole lives. But there also comes a point where seeking grows corrupted, and that's what we see in this chapter. And so I like this little diagram that I found online. Well, I made it, but I just found the picture online. I think pursuing truth really is kind of a tightrope walk. And on one hand, there's a respect for mystery, which is where I tend to fall, as you guys know. Right? We've talked a ton about truth being something that's not, we can't completely grasp it in whole, that we get glimpses of it, right? But that we live in the mist, or that we live in the twilight, to use the Great Divorce's analogy. That it's bigger than us, right? That providence works on its own timing, that we don't understand everything, and that's okay. And I definitely tend to fall on the side of truth being something mysterious and impossible to nail down. And a lot of y'all throughout the year have called me out on that when I've gone too far. And that's been such a blessing to me. A lot of y'all, I can think of like Matthew Patrick, I think Allie Brown, a couple of y'all have said like, well, hold on, Mr. Harvey. Are you going too far in saying there are no such thing as answers? And that's been such kind of a pullback for me to the edge of, okay, am I actually desiring answers, or am I just seeking to seek? Okay, so it's such a tightrope walk between a respect for mystery, because in so many ways, truth is mysterious. There's no two ways about it. Truth is mysterious. We can't grasp it in its entirety. However, if you go too far, it becomes to the point where it's like, okay, well, do I just say truth is mysterious and I'm just content with saying that? Or do I actually want to know? Um, do I actually desire answers? And so it's such a balance between the two. And that's what we see in chapter 5. And that's why it's been so convicting to me, is we get the character of the bishop. I call him the seeker, right? He's a character who, he's an intellectual, he's a philosopher, he's a thinker, he's someone who wants to know. However, his friend is the one in the high countries, and I call him the found. He's someone who knows, who is in heaven and knows completely, and they meet at the bus stop and have this really incredible conversation. And I I think the reason I'm so like thrown off by this is because I see myself in the seeker completely. I understood his arguments, and I saw himself, or saw myself in him. And so I'm going to kind of look at this as like a fictional argument between the two, and hopefully you guys can be annotating quotes and stuff that represent these sort of things. But the seeker essentially shows up, and he sees his friend, who's a solid person, and he tells his friend, he goes, "Hey, remember how narrow-minded you became back when we were living? Do you remember how you actually began to believe that there was a literal heaven and hell, that there was a literal thing called Jesus, or a person called Jesus, and that was the cold hard facts?" Um, And he's kind of saying it hoping that his friend will be like, oh yeah, I remember how crazy we were. But his friend says, well, can't you see that I was right? I mean, look at us. We're in heaven and you're a ghost living in the gray town. Do you realize where you've been? Um, and his friend, the ghost, is like, well, I mean, no, I don't really know where I've been. He says, you've been in hell. Can you not see that I was exactly right, that there is a literal heaven and hell, and you're in hell and I'm in heaven? Like, look around you. You found the truth. Here are the answers. You apostatized, which means you fell away from the faith. He's an apostate, someone who was a Christian and then fell away. And his friend is like, oh, no, I mean, you could call it that, but let's theorize together. Let's think about what is heaven and hell. Could we turn hell into heaven based off of perspective? And he takes it on this philosophical level. And his friend, the solid person, is like, no, look, you're here. The answers are right in front of you. Stop looking. Stop looking and accept the answers. And his friend, the bishop, says, the ghost says, no, you don't understand. Back then on earth, I was a hero because I followed my honest opinions wherever they took me. I pursued truth. I was a seeker. And he actually says, when I realized that the resurrection couldn't happen, even though I was a pastor, I preached a sermon about how I was wrong. And I said, I no longer believe this. And I'm a hero for doing that. I'm following truth, even though people, I had so much relying on this. And it reminds me so much of the video that I just watched of Rhett and Link, where they've come out on YouTube and they've said, here's why we no longer believe what we used to believe. Here's our deconstruction of the faith. And they really they portray themselves somewhat, and so much of their following portrays them as heroes, right? You are so heroic for following your intellectual beliefs wherever they take you, even if they take you away from your Christian faith. And that's exactly what the bishop has done. And his friend, the solid person, says, well, I mean, you pursued truth that was easy and that benefited you, right? You're popular now. You sold a ton of books because everyone was like, oh, here's a pastor who fell away. Like Rhett and Link, you gained a ton of YouTube followers. Your video of your deconstruction of the faith has millions of views, right? It was popular to fall away. And this is where I feel myself being pulled, is that I want to be considered an intellectually open-minded person. And to do that, you can't be someone who says, yes, the Bible is absolutely true. You can't. If you go into the world of academia, you go into the world of thinkers and seekers, you're going to be disregarded as someone who is narrow-minded and simple, right? And so there's such a draw to be someone who's open-minded and who says, I'm going to pursue truth wherever it takes me, yada yada yada. It's so nerve-wracking to say, no, this is true, because people just discredit you and say, oh, you're just a sheep. You're a sheep. You're a follower. You just believe whatever your pastor says. And that's what the bishop thinks about his friend, the solid person. You're a sheep. You just followed. And the solid person saying to his friend, the ghost, says, no, back then we just pursued truth because it was easy. We said we were pursuing truth, but really we were just philosophizing in order to be popular, in order to be seen as thinkers, in order to be seen as seekers, even though we didn't actually want answers. And the bishop then replies and says, but I'll go to heaven with you. I'll go to the high countries with you, but I must be allowed to pursue answers to all of my questions. And he has this great quote. He says, to travel hopefully is better than to arrive. Right? It's better to travel hopefully, to hope for answers and to ask questions and to seek your answers to questions. It's better to do that than to actually get the answers, because once you have the answers, game over, right? That's it. You did it. You're done. And he's like, I don't want that. I want to be able to seek. I want to be able to look. I want to be able to explore the mystery. I want to be able to explore the mystery. And while there's a lot of truth in the fact that so much of truth is mysterious, there comes a point where you need to say, yes, there are answers. And that's what his friend replies. His friend replies, well, back then, we didn't actually want answers. And so he's really calling out his friend. He's saying, when we were seeking together, we didn't actually want answers to our questions. We just wanted questions. And that's where, to me, it's like, ugh, right? Because, I mean, y'all know this because I've taught you for the last 9 months. I love questions. I love the mystery. I love the things that you can't pin down. I love paradox. And there's so much truth in that. However, there's also a fact where you have to say, okay, do I want answers? Do I want real, tangible answers? Or do I just want to seek uh, as some sort of corrupted seeking just to do it? And the solid person tells his friend, the bishop, he says, we didn't want answers back then. It took the fun away. It took the fun of seeking and being seen as an intellectual. It took that away, but now I have the answers. He's like, look around me. I get it. I have answers, and I'm offering them to you. And he really almost quotes Jesus here when he says, seek the kingdom of heaven like a child. A child, when they have questions, they ask a question because they want an answer. They don't ask a question because they think it's intellectual to do so, or they don't ask a question because they think people will see me as smart, people will see me as open-minded. No, a kid asks a question because he wants an answer. And Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is for children and for those with the heart of a child. And that's what he's getting at here, right? We need to want answers. We need to desire to actually have an answer instead of just seeking in order to seek. Um, his friend, the ghost, which could literally be me, which is just crazy, says, well, I'm not aware of a thirst for some ready-made truth, right? I don't want some cold, hard answer, which puts an end to all intellectual activity. No, I want to seek. I want to think. I want to explore the mystery. He says, I must have the free play of mind. Uh, I'm putting away the child. Adults think. Adults think. Adults don't just accept things. And then his friend who's in heaven has a beautiful quote. He says, thirst was made for water. Inquiry, meaning questions, for truth. It's another way of saying for every key there is a lock. Thirst was made for water. The reason you thirst is because we want water. You want answers. The reason you question needs to be because there is a truth that is an answer that will satisfy that question. It becomes perverted. It becomes a perverted seeking when you are just seeking because that's what you do, and you think truth is all mysterious and that it can't be grasped and that there's no answer to it, that it becomes foolish. And that's where I feel so convicted, is that is so much of what I do, is that I seek solely for the purpose of seeking, solely for diving into the mystery when maybe the mystery has been revealed in the person of Jesus, right? And I'm just like, oh, well, that's too easy. That takes away the fun. Let's hypothesize. Let's think of truth as abstract. Let's think of truth as paradox. Let's think of truth as mystery, which is so much of it is, which is why I think it's so important to go back to this diagram, is that it's both. It's a respect for a mystery while desiring answers, and seeing the culmination of those two as the person of Jesus. Um, but if you just lean too far on the mystery side, which I tend to do, you can begin to neglect that there are answers. And so he has that great quote: "Thirst is made for water, inquiry for truth. For every key there is a lock." And then finally, his ghost friend says, "You keep talking as if truth were something objective. It's really all a mystery that we just dabble in." And so there's really kind of his closing remark. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, "I don't believe in a ready-made truth. I don't think there's something objective and standard to which we can adhere. I don't think we can actually escape the cave. We're all just kind of groping in the dark, living in the mist." And that's where I tend to fall at times, is to see it that way. And his friend puts it very simply. He says, "But I have the solution to the mystery, and it's Christ. My search is over. I'm done seeking because I have answers. The solution to the mystery is Christ, who in and of himself, at times, it's very mysterious. We don't understand everything. But there comes a point where Jesus says, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. The search is over. right? There's lots of things you won't understand, like the grandmother says in Princess and the Goblin, but you can understand this now. I am truth. And that's what Jesus is saying, and that's what the solid person tells to his ghost friend. He says, "This is the end. This is the end of your search." And his friend goes back. And I love and hate. Hate because it's so convicting, love because C.S. Lewis does such a good job pinning it down. But the reason his friend goes back is because he's holding a theological Bible study, basically. He's holding a lecture because he wants to keep seeking. And he's seeking about who Jesus is in this lecture when the answer was right there in front of him. He could have seen Jesus face to face. He says, "No, I need to go back to hell. I need to go back to my life in the twilight, in the mist, uh, because I'm leading this Bible study about seeking, about looking for answers, and about who Jesus might have been, and hypothesizing and asking questions and dabbling into the mystery when the answer was right there in front of him." And so he goes back. And so another theme we see, and I want y'all to add this to your theme list, if the big man in chapter 4 showed us that to stay in the high country requires a giving up of self, um, the bishop in chapter 5 shows that to stay in the high country requires an accepting of answers. It requires saying, yes, so much of life is mysterious, so much of truth is mysterious, and we'll never have the full picture. However, there comes a point where we need to say, either Jesus is the truth or he's not. And you can't dabble in that in between like I've done for so long, right? And I noticed this in myself, and this is, I think there's a beauty in what I think I've done this year in class, which is to push y'all a little bit toward the side of respect for mystery, because so many of you and even myself at times have come from places where, or just at this point in life maybe, where truth has been depicted as easy box in the shape of the Bible, which it is, but it's also way more. There's so much mystery compacted in that, but there's also a danger that I've pushed you too far. And so I think C.S. Lewis here in God uh, is dragging me back and saying, don't get too caught up in the mystery. Jesus is the answer, right? Jesus is the answer, and it requires an accepting of those answers. To stay in the high country requires saying, yes, Jesus is the culmination of that. And he is yeah, he's the answer that we're looking for. So I hope this means something to y'all, because this chapter just struck me. I hope you're really looking for quotes and things that exemplify that free play of mind mentality. Um, and I hope that you see that while mystery is so important, the purpose of seeking is to find answers.